What's up, guys? What's up, YouTube? My wife's back there, little nugget, dog. What kind of doggy? Poodle?
Yeah.
Ashley. Who else is there?
That's it.
That's it. Darren's here. Adina.
Yes.
Yeah. My wife has her bag of Sour Patch Kids.
I feel like I did the share those.
No,
My mouth is watering.
I went to CVS and they didn't have any like individual ones, so I was like, might as well just get the big bag.
Target has the big bag. That is the best.
Don't eat it in
Get
there.
the big bag.
No, I'm
No,
good.
it's okay.
Unless Adina
Oh
wants
yeah, I'll
it.
have some.
But you're gonna hear her chomping this freaking mic.
I'm not gonna chomp. I'm just gonna do
I
a
have
little.
a freaking loogie in my throat, dude.
See, it's not any worse than you fucking. See.
Oh! I'm gonna
I
gag.
thought that was the dog.
All right.
Let me put it.
All right, here we go.
Okay, I hand those
You
back
ready?
to Jamie.
I think you have an ear.
Here we go.
Seriously, my ear hurts.
I think you like straight up something like that.
All right, here we go. Don't.
Do you want this back?
Don't.
Okay. Sponsored by Sour Patch Kids.
Sour Patch.
We cannot eat those while
Dude, we should take a still
I
shot
can.
of this and tag them and say, we should take a still shot tonight and send it to Sour Patch. I did that with eight. You alright, babe? Almost
Yeah.
knocked over our freaking feed.
Well, and we took her Sour Patch. She came up here just to eat those.
Yeah. Alright. Ready? Episode what?
73.
Dang. We're coming
Wait,
up on 100.
let me make sure.
100.
100, yeah, 73.
You ready?
Hour.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Did you share the notes?
No, on purpose.
Alright. I'm gonna talk like a tennis coach. Quiet, please.
Let's go.
Hold on, dude. I just hit the board. Hang on. Gotta go back. What? Adina. Stop. She's chewing in the mic. Alright, here we go. Hey, YouTube. Oh, son of a gun.
It's gonna be one of those nights.
Okay, no, it's not.
I love it. These are my favorite.
Everyone, welcome back to the Made for More Consulting Podcast. I can't get the introduction right, so we were all laughing. But welcome to episode 73.
Correct.
Podcast all about helping leaders become better so that we can invest in the people around us and make them better. Motivate and inspire and encourage is what we do, along with building individuals up. So, welcome back. And Adina, hello.
Hi, glad to be here.
Darren's here. Tatiana's here.
Hey.
Hey.
Jamie's here. Ashley's here, and so is Nugget. So Nugget's a poodle.
So if you hear Nugget in the background,
You can't hear. Yeah, or else if you hear Adina chomping on a
yeah, and if you
Sour
well,
Patch.
so if you go watch on YouTube, you would know what kind of candy
Yeah.
you're all eating.
Yeah, I just said it. In so 73. If you have never listened to this podcast, this is your very first one. Go back and listen to.
I don't know. I was gonna say I'm sorry that this is your first introduction to us is like right this minute because I'm sorry.
Episode 65 is
65.
what I was trying to say.
Or number 1 or 27.
Yeah,
Yeah.
127 or 65. 65 is the latest one. Yeah, that's good. We are going to be starting the Leader Within 2.0 in 3 weeks, I believe. So just if you don't have that book, go and buy it.
Yeah, but for the next 3 weeks, I know you have some really cool like interviews coming up, and some really good content planned. So
Exactly.
don't tune out for 3 weeks.
Summer
Go
is
ahead and
starting.
listen. Yeah,
Like
crazy.
summer starts, school's out here in
Yes,
Texas. If
that-
you're listening from out of state, I don't know
Pretty
when everybody
much
else is.
done. Yes.
Yeah. And so yeah, episode 73. Go ahead and follow us on the socials if you don't, and rate us on wherever you listen to your podcast. I don't know where we're going tonight. Adina is going to take over, and so by the time you listen to this, my last day, right? I mean, I'll be done.
No,
No,
not
you'll
technically.
have
One day.
Two
Okay.
more. Yeah.
Technically,
Alright.
but
2 more calendar days.
But
one
so
more
I
office
think
day.
you should talk just a tad about like why are we doing this episode? Like
Yeah.
why are we doing this episode?
No,
Okay.
I'm coming up to the end of 14 years at one of my jobs.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time.
Well, and I think no matter how long you've been in a job, whether it is a year or 14 years or 25 years, you want to leave well, and I think that if you started the job as one person and you leave the same person, then
So,
something went right, you know, whether it was something inside of you, something on your team or your leader. And so tonight, I think that is what I kind of want to talk about is, I mean, I want to honor you for being at a job for 14 years, because I think in today's world, that isn't as common, you know, as it used to be. And also kind of point out some of the growth that you've had within that 14 years, and then help other people, you know, kind of give them some practical tips on how to leave a job well, because when it's time to go, it's time to go, you know. And I think we've talked about it a couple of different times, you know, kind of like how you knew it was time to go. You know, we've been through that. But I think we should start with one of the things that, if you are listening and you have not, if you don't follow Mario on Instagram, he is doing 14 years and 14 days. And so every day you're kind of taking a different lesson or like something that you've learned or a memory that you've had. And I think that that is a very healthy way to like process it. And for you, because you were in so many people's lives, you're giving them the opportunity to kind of have that same closure. And I think that that is something that a lot of people don't realize when they leave, is how it affects everyone around them. You know, the other employees, the organization, especially whenever you have been there you know, for so long.
Yeah, you develop good friendships, right?
You do. Well, and the organization has had a big impact on you, and you've had an impact on the organization. And so I think for the first part of the podcast, I want to ask you just some personal questions about like how you've grown. And
have we shared these questions with each other?
No.
So everyone
yes,
knows.
Right before the podcast, he goes, "Did you share the notes?" And I said, "No, on purpose. I don't want you to. I want this to be like your first, like reaction, your first real reaction, not like you know good. Something you've thought about." So. Okay, so like we said just a few minutes ago, at the very beginning, from day one, you were a very different person from when you walked through the doors of the organization 14 years ago. Which which was pointed out to me this week that it's like 14 years to the day.
I told myself that I wasn't gonna end. It was almost ending 13 years, 362 days or something like that.
You're
or
like, I'm not doing
4 days. I was like, no, I want to finish on that day.
Yes,
so
and so I thought that was like, wow, that doesn't happen very often.
Closer.
So you know that you are not the same person. So what would you say, like, and this is a big question, but what would you say is the biggest change if you think back to, you know, you walking in 14 years ago to like who you are today?
One of the things for sure is that I can't do anything alone, and I thought that you could. And for people that don't know, it's student ministry. So when I came in, I thought that you just gather students and do all these fun things and go to camps and teach them different life lessons. But I thought that you could do that alone. Not meaning alone me, but me and my wife. And so when you get a gym full of students and you're the only two leaders, you're responsible for 70, 80 students at one point. You're in a world of hurt if somebody gets hurt or something happens or you find kids making out and you're like, what's going on? We're in trouble. And so really the biggest thing that I know I've learned is that it's not all about me. And not that I came in with that ego, it came in as in, this is gonna be simple. This is a dream job. It's gonna be easy because all we gotta do is gather kids and have fun, play games, and teach them a lesson. And but I didn't realize how much you needed people, because I thought it was just going to be easy. And it was easy to do the games and the teaching for me, but gathering people was not easy at all.
So one of the things you just said is you said, I thought it was going to be simple.
Yeah.
And so 14 years in student ministry was not and is not simple.
No, it got easier.
It did get easier. And you had some transitions, like some job transitions in there, so it wasn't 14 years in the full time. So what would you say was the toughest time in ministry?
Toughest time in ministry?
Yep. Yeah.
Man, I can tell you to this day, I mean, I always go back to it. I was you can label this under almost losing your family, right? So to this day, I'll never forget, we were at camp, and our students were going into worship because camp was kicking off, or the second day of camp was kicking off or something. And to this day, I'll never forget it, because the students had left to go to camp, and I stayed back in this room with no other leaders. I was alone in the room, and my daughter Allie FaceTimed me, and she'd fallen off her bike, and it was a FaceTime call, and she was crying. I was like, crap, I wish I was there. And I literally, my comment to one of the leaders that turned around that came back to check on me, there was a couple, they both came back and they said, what's going on? I said, these ungrateful students and we were having a tough time with some students. That was the first year I ever had to send a kid home from camp. And I said, some of these students are so ungrateful, and my daughter's at home, in West Texas, missing her dad, falling off her bike, learning how to ride a bike, and it's not me teaching her. And so really the toughest time was not knowing how to balance life, my family and ministry. It could have been the finish line. It could have been made for more. I just didn't know how to balance life and ministry. But in ministry, I'll tell you this, and I guess maybe I'm wrong, but in ministry, everybody has access to you, needs access to you, because they all have a problem. And at some point when you say no, it could be life or death, or it could be a very extreme problem for them. And being at camp, you're on 24/7. And so I didn't draw that line very well. And I'll tell you, at that point in time, that was the first time in ministry where I probably thought, man, I can't do this. I don't want to be away from my daughter. And I was a new dad, maybe she was 3. I can't remember. 4, I don't remember.
So one of the things you just touched on was work-life balance.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is an important, we're going to take a little side note for that.
Yeah.
So, because I think that is one of the things that to stay in an organization that long is you have to create some work-life balance.
Yeah, boundaries.
Boundaries, yeah. And so can you talk a little bit about how you did that and what that looked like and maybe what that cost you at home and in the organization?
So, I think there was how I did that. One is getting to the point where you almost lose your marriage and your family. I'll never forget. Being totally authentic. Going into Shane's office and just saying, I'm done. I'm so done. And Jamie was there, and we shut the door, and we were in there for about 3 hours on a freaking Saturday, our day off. And we just talked about how I didn't have boundaries, and that wasn't the fix, right? But what I realized was I had some great leaders, some amazing leaders. But what I was doing was still trying to control things instead of empowering them. So the boundaries were, hey, I'm going to pull back doing all these other things for students, and I'm going to get really good at what we can maybe accomplish on the weekends or do certain days. Because at that point, we were doing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then an event, and then small group for us as adults, and then coming back Sunday. And then Friday nights we were expected to be at football games. And so we had everything every night of the week. And then my wife was singing in the band, and we're like, we're never alone. We're never together. We never have family time. And so I blame that on other people rather than myself. And so when it came to a breaking point, and I had to say I have to build boundaries, I realized I needed to empower people, and they cared about me. I didn't know. I was so focused on the people that were draining me rather than the people that wanted to help. And so the boundaries were just being able, number one, and I know I've said this to you, I know you said this too, and I think one of the biggest problems with leaders is their ability to say no. Mm-hmm. They can't. And some of my clients now, but to this day, and I think it's okay to say this, but like your son-in-law and Mark, they're good friends now, but they know that after 5 o'clock, our group text is going off, I'm not going to respond. And you can ask them why, and they're going to say, he's drawn a boundary. And we'll banter back and forth, but they know that my family time is more important than anything else. And so in ministry, those boundaries were saying, I'm not going to answer that phone call. I'm going to limit my time texting with students. And that was tough because they're great students, they're great kids, but I had to limit my time texting students. And then the other part was investing in an adult small group where me and my wife could hang out with people that were our age or our friends and try to refill that cup. And I think it did. And I think that the focus on saying no was one of the biggest helps.
Yeah, so it sounds like in creating that balance, you worked on empowering people, setting boundaries, and saying no. And I think those are 3 great things that I think anybody can do.
Yeah, and I think leaders need to get away from the fact that if you're just because you're not saying yes doesn't mean you're not the leader. Your leader provides vision and empowers people. So when when you realize that empowering people is going to leave a legacy, saying yes to everything isn't, because you're losing your legacy with your family, and you don't want to be that person.
Well, and I think early on as a leader or in an organization and a business that you feel like you have to know everything and do everything.
That's right.
Like your value is all in, do I know everything that's going on, and am I doing everything? And I think as you grow as a leader, as a person, you realize that's not the value that you bring.
That's right.
You know, and I think that it's one of those things, if you could learn that lesson early,
yeah.
you know, it'd be way beneficial. So one of the things, you've talked a little bit about how hard, you know, being in ministry was, and you specifically with being in student ministry.
Yeah.
And I, fortunately and unfortunately both, I guess, got to like walk alongside you, kind of watching, you know, things that you went through in student ministry. Why do you laugh at that?
No, because I remember the offices. I mean, we didn't have a building for the first 7 years. And then we had an office, like a freaking office that was in the middle of nowhere. And, I mean, that was all we had.
But one of the things I would say that I watched you walk through and like navigate, that I saw a lot of like personal growth, and not like leadership growth, but like personal growth, is as you watched your students die, and you dealing with, you know, they're passing away, and then you're dealing with their friends, and then they're losing their family. And so can you talk a little bit about like how those really tough times, that was one of the things that you couldn't do anything about. You know,
you don't have control.
There's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is walk alongside somebody going through a really hard time.
Yeah.
So how would you say that changed you as a leader, walking through all those tough times with your students?
What was crazy was my first week here. My first weekend here. I moved from Midland, and my first weekend here, I had to walk into a home and tell twins, a brother and a sister, that their dad had died. They were coming home from camp, and we were waiting for them in their house. And they stepped in, and they're like, "Why is everybody here?"
Oh yeah.
And that was my first week.
There was a whole lot of us.
First week here, and I was like, "Crap!" And then Shane couldn't make that weekend, and he had to leave. So I was there. I'm doing my first funeral. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do. And Casey told her, you know, your brother-in-law came in, and he helped me, and I didn't know the guy. I didn't know the guy that passed away, but I knew that these were going to be my students. And so right off the bat, I was like, that's crazy. And then being at a dance recital, watching we didn't even have kids. Me and Jamie were just investing in some students. And we got a text saying, hey, somebody's on a car accident. You want to get up to the hospital? That was probably a year and a half after, or 2 years. And that was our first student that we lost. And then, you know, I quickly realized that the reason I came to church was because I lost a really good friend, my best friend. And when people started to pass away here, and it was our job, I quickly realized that I can say this personally. People may not agree with this, but personally, I knew that God was going to use death in my life in a way that I didn't like. And it was probably after the second or third death that I go, this is just going to be a part of our story. And it sucked. But like when Joey passed away, and Megan, you know, she committed suicide in the bathroom of a high school, and being the first one to go talk to her mom, and us not even knowing each other, I realized that the death that had happened was going to bring, there was going to be kids with questions. And I wasn't trying to grow our youth ministry, but the opportunity for me was going, we're about to walk through something that's not fun, but there's people asking questions. So this isn't about church. This isn't about me trying to get my name out there. It's about me trying to help students go through what I went through when I was 18. And I didn't know any better. I didn't know how to lose. I didn't know that the seat that he sat in was going to be empty. I didn't know that the class that we went to was going to be empty. I didn't know that he wasn't going to come over anymore. Those were the firsts. And so, you know, Megan's dad was on deployment in Iraq, and then Joey's parents, we were the first ones there I was baptizing someone, and they came out and said, hey, we need you to get out and go to Joey's house. And we were the first ones there with the sheriff. And unfortunately, most of the deaths were not, most of the deaths could have been preventable. You know, drugs, overdose, there's a couple of accidents, and then, you know, some disease. But it was a mindset shift change to go. It's almost what Jocko said, and I didn't know Jocko back then, but what he says now is there's going to be some good coming. You have to remember that, and in the meantime, if you're not the one that can see the good, you have to have somebody around you that can go, I'm not telling you there's going to be good. I'm just going to be beside you so that I can show you the good that's going to come from it. And I wish I could bring back those students, and I can't. But I do know the good that's come from it this many years, still to this day. That probably has been the most influential, unfortunate chain of events that changed my ministry and changed us. Because losing students isn't easy, but that was the story I think that God has placed me in, and it, to this day still I think is, we just had a lot of death. So.
Well, it sounds like
Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And as you were walking through that, like what I heard you say is that at some point you stopped thinking about your ministry, you stopped thinking about being a leader, and you were like, I'm just going to be here for these students. I'm going to be compassionate. I'm going to be empathetic, and I'm just going to be whatever they need in this situation. And I think that is exactly what a leader does. Is they don't think about themselves in those times.
Yeah.
You know, and I know, like from watching you, that those were very difficult times, and each one of those situations, like you have seen something good, you know, come around the fact that something good does come out of that, you know, whether it's relationships that are built, or even, you know, when people that see God that didn't know God, didn't believe in God, and they're like, oh wow, like after all of this, I can see that God is right here with us, even in, you know, the hardest of times.
And I think the things that, I mean, Jamie's seen me get ready for funerals and have to go meet with families, I think more than anybody. But the thing that it wasn't, I guess what I was, again, what you just said is it didn't turn out the way I thought it was, but it still produced growth. And then the part that I didn't realize the most was even families that I didn't know, that going into their home and talking about this loved one, you feel like you know that person, and you go, man, I'm gonna have to stand up there and talk about this. And that is a little bit of, I guess, growth too, to go, man, I gotta pay honor to this person I didn't know, and it makes you cherish life. And then you know, on top of that, losing our grandparents and people that we love was not easy.
So one of the things with being in leadership and being in ministry that you've talked about all through the podcast, and even just in, you know, your job, is relationships, and how important relationships are. So that's another area I really saw you grow in, you know, because when you first came, you didn't have those relationships, and like you kind of said earlier, you were like, I can just do this on my own. You know, I think it was kind of the attitude like, I'll have some friends, but I don't really need anybody. And so how would you say that changed, you know, over the 14 years, to where you kind of realized like relationships are the key to leadership? Because even in the last few years, I've seen you make a marked, like, different, like, you know, like, say relationships are important. It's all about the relationship. It's all about the relationship, you know. And so how would you say that's changed over the last 14 years?
I think our group our core group around our family has grown. I wouldn't say bigger. It's always changed, because you guys were the first ones to say, hey, y'all come over our house, it's going to be a small group. I didn't know what a small group was. It was like, cool, I guess. And we had it was a diverse.
Side note, Tiana, I think I have a picture of that night. We should put that in the notes.
It was such a diverse group of people in that small group. And I think we were the youngest ones there. And that's where you had said, you know, we're going to pray for a baby.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You prayed
Heck
that prayer that Jamie Mario would have a baby, and that week we found out she was pregnant.
I remember Jamie walking into the office being
so
like,
pissed.
I can't believe it.
But anyways, no, I think what I realized was that when you come home from a student event and you're drained, and you get back up and you go to the office, that somewhere in there you have to have more than your spouse, in a good way, meaning as a couple, we need to have people in our lives. And we had those people, and we were somewhat authentic, and yes, we walked with people through the problems that we had. I think for me, it was the fact that I can be completely real with a group of guys or a small group, and they're not going to judge me. But I think for me, it was going, you know what, I have to just completely realize that if all this fails, if the church went away, if the company went away, I still have to connect with people. because there's nothing that's ever going to replace the human interaction with people. And I don't know when I learned that, Adina. I think it was when we went from a Sunday morning program to a Wednesday night program, and we had like 40 something leaders, and it was unheard of. But my investment changed from investing in students to investing in leaders. And that's when those group of leaders started to draw close to us, and that's when we go, these leaders care about us, but they care about us because they're working with kids. And
Yeah, I think, like, in watching you, I think there was a time when you and Jay, I don't remember how long y'all had been here, when you guys kind of went through a hard time, and I think that was a time when both of you kind of realized, like, okay, like, we have to have other people, you know, in our lives. And I think that was kind of the beginning of y'all letting people into your lives and kind of building those authentic relationships. And then I think that kind of opened the door to what you said, which was like having those people. You also talk about on Instagram, you went through like a recovery program.
Yeah.
And I think that was,
that was a big one.
That was a big one because you developed that, like what you said on Instagram was that you were able to connect with those men who you could be yourself, you could be real. There was no judgment.
Yeah.
And still to this day, they are still in your life.
Oh, yeah.
And you're still, close to them. And so I think that gave you the foundation to then really start investing in other people, and I think you saw your ministry grow tremendously.
Yeah, I think, side note, let's rewind
Go
back
ahead, rewind.
to praying for a student,
Okay.
or praying for a daughter, and I got pissed, and Jamie went to the office and said, you won't believe this. Well, we went back to Midland to visit one Thanksgiving, and Jay Mayo, who's been on the podcast multiple times because he has nothing else to do, is he came on, he took us out to dinner, and we went to, I'll never forget, we went to one of the fish places there, and we're sitting there, and it's him and his wife Sherry and me and Jamie. And when we said that we were pregnant, the first words that came out of his mouth were, "What the hell are you thinking?" And I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "You shouldn't have a kid the first year in the ministry." I was like, "Why didn't you freaking tell me when we took the job that you kind of put me in place for?" But we were 28 or 29, and we were older, but the fact that we weren't having people in our lives, like you said, and you add on top going through a pregnancy and just something every night, it became something where we go, we're just maintaining and we're just surviving, and we don't have time for people. We didn't think we did. And when we did have time for somebody else or people, we thought that's just one extra thing on top of that. And then that began to break. And I think what was interesting was going to that recovery meeting and realizing that you do need recovery, regardless if you have a substance abuse, drug abuse, or whatever, that you learn those qualities and those tools for your tool belt of that you do need people, that you need someone to be authentic with and real with, and somebody who can check on you. And it's not accountability, it's they're checking on you to go, you have this pattern and you're going down the wrong path. And I'm telling you, you've told me about these things, you're headed that way. And one of the things I remembered about doing this 14 years and 14 days that it's been good is I remember we would go get ice cream, you and Darren at that Shakes or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And then we'd go eat ice cream with Shane and Amy if we weren't hanging out with you guys, we'd go there. And it had no agenda, no church agenda. It was just to go, how you doing? Or how are our kids doing? Or whatever. And it was just hanging out, being friends with somebody that you could be friends with and be real. And so like Shane Mack was my sponsor, continues to check on me. We text all the time. And we play that role for each other to go, hey man, how's it going? And so I think when you begin to know that you need people in your life, you can't stop there. It's going, I need people in my life that I can be completely real with, to where I'm about to share everything that's ever gone on in my life. Can you accept that, and can you accept me without letting everyone else know? But then when you begin to let everybody know, them know what you've gone through, and then you share that over and over again, there's nothing else to hide. So it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. So one of the things, whenever you leave somewhere, is like, how do you say it? Like, it's creating that ownership. It's saying, like, this was my part in, my role in the organization, good and bad. And so, what would you say was your biggest, mistake that you made in ministry over the last 14 years?
Son of a gun. I had a lot. Biggest
Listen,
mistake.
we only have limited time. So
the biggest mistake in the last 14 years?
Yeah.
Sheesh. It's probably, I would say, this was probably the case, more so in the beginning, not so much in the last 2 years. So, I mean, it's pretty fresh. It would probably be not speaking up when we needed a change, or when I saw something wrong that other people didn't. And not wrong in a bad way, like moral. Just like, hey, I think we should go wrong. I think we should go a different route. Not pushing back when it's a good pushback, like, hey, can we do it this way? Or asking questions. Maybe I should say that. Asking questions, not voicing my opinion at times. Yeah, that's probably it. That's probably the biggest one, because what happens is people around you, maybe some of the things that they could have brought to the table weren't shared because I didn't push back or share or ask questions when someone had an idea, or if I had an idea and I never shared it. So I never questioned things, and yeah.
I mean, I feel like we should make a note of that and do like a lowdown on that, because that's is how to question things.
Is the lowdown a thing anymore?
But I don't know.
Adam Adams told me.
It's not a thing anymore. Be consistent, Mario. So on that same note, what would you say your biggest win was?
Man, and this is like, I mean, I've thought through this the last 14 years, and I think it's something that is not, it can't be measured, right? And it's the fact that I've invested in people when no one else wanted to. So I think I think that's it. And I don't know how to say that, like, as in, it's not glamorous, because you have to spend time with people that some people don't want to, or you have to spend time with people that are going to do a horrible job at the beginning because you're going to be walking with them, and then they begin to get better, and then they start to take ownership. But most people want to say, hey, here's a job, just go do it. And whether that was in church, in student ministry, at the campus that I was over, or just in life, I think when I hear the words, hey, you gave me a shot when no one else did, or hey, you listened when no one else would, that's the long game, that whenever I'm done with the ministry, that I still have friends and I still have an influence because I listened when no one else would. I'm not saying that no one else does. It's just easier to go, just come talk to me, and it's gonna go in one ear, not the other. But I couldn't, because I wanted to invest. I wanted to empower people.
Well, I think that goes back to what you said, that you like, it was all about the relationship. Mm-hmm. You were very relational, and it really did invest in people. So one of the things about leading well is honoring those who've led you. And so over the years, I know you have had you've had one main boss, pastor.
Yeah.
But I know that you've had a lot of other people in your life, that have within the job, that have kind of come in and have helped you be who you are. And so how would you answer that? How would you say, if you were telling somebody, okay, honor the people that led you? What would you like to say to the people that kind of led you, that helped you get to where, you are today?
Yeah, I mean, well, obviously, our boss, Shane, he allowed me to, my dream job was to be a student pastor, because I saw what he was doing for us when we were students. And again, he may not even remember this, but I remember my senior night at the church. I'd never been to church in my life. And so when they started celebrating on my senior year, I'd only been there for 6 months. And he did this every year, apparently. I'd never seen it, but for me, it was my first year there to be a graduating senior. And Shane said, hey, I need to call out 3 students and do this every year. And these 3 students, he named off, their leaders, they influence people. And he named 2 people. I know one was Jace, and I think one was Leslie, and then one was me. And I'll never forget that, because it was going, okay, somebody sees something in me, and this is new to me, and maybe I could play a role in that. And so Shane always saw that. Shane, and he'll say that, he says it to all of us. He sees more in us than we can do sometimes, and with a lot of people. So, but I think for me is Shane, for sure, being able to, when I was a student pastor, man, he'd never gotten my lane. He never did not trust me. And the thing that I appreciated the most was that when that mom stood outside of Leander Middle School, she said, I want to punch you right now. I was like, bring it, hit me.
Bring it on, sister.
freaking hoochie, man. She was going off about us playing a freaking
yeah.
Disney song in there. So Shane said,
move it.
So Shane went up to her and was like, hold on, you don't know his heart. And I saw that consistently, him, taking up for me. When Sunday wasn't around, Shane would pull you in his office and say, hey, I'm proud of you. And again, the things that he blocked for me, like as he says, so that I could do student ministry. And then I think the biggest one that not the biggest one, but one of the most influential people was Jay. When Jay didn't work here, and we were having freaking marriage problems, even before we were married, Jay was there for us. And then when we were here, he would call and, hey man, I just want to check on you. Hey man, I want to check on you. And Jay, just because of the fact that we were friends before we were coworkers, and so he just played that role of encourager and, hey, how can I help? Or, hey, have you tried this? And sometimes he wouldn't ever try to fix me. And he would never try to fix me. He would just listen. So Shane, Jay, I think Shane Mack and Mark Cooper, who helped me through recovery and see that recovery is needed by everybody, and the fact that, that you don't have to have it all together. And so, for sure, those two.
Yeah, well, I think, listen, all four of those people, that you named are people that have, know you and know everything about you. And I think it's what you said in the very beginning was that you told them the truth about you, and they loved and accepted you just as you were, you know. And I think that that's huge. And I think that you were very fortunate that those people in your life were also people that you were considered like leaders in your life, like even Shane as your boss and your pastor. That's huge, because not everybody has that in a boss,
Yeah.
And I remember one of the things you said to me years ago while we were back in the Blue House, was, I don't even know exactly what had happened or what you were talking
I have
about.
a pretty good memory.
Yeah,
So.
but one of the things you said is you said something along the lines of, I had to walk in there and tell him something that you should never have to tell your pastor, or something along those lines. And I just remember thinking, wow, that had to be so hard.
Yeah.
But it was how he responded with it was nothing but,
Yeah.
I gotcha, here we go,
Yeah.
and I know that moment was a really big moment for you, for that, for that relationship. So
Trust,
trust, totally. And we talked about that in the last episode, trust and vulnerability, how they're tied
Episode
together.
72.
Yeah, there we go. So, a couple more things. One of the things that...
Hold on,
Okay.
before you...
Okay.
Just know that those
Okay.
are for the people, but there's been plenty, just in case
Well,
they're
yes.
listening.
Well, and you did.
There's tons of people.
You had a
From
ton,
you guys to our small group to people that...
and I
we
think
work
even
with.
all of your leaders,
Yes.
but yes,
Yes.
totally.
Okay.
Way to go. Okay. So, one of the things that's really important whenever you're leaving and you want to leave something really well is to be able to process everything that you've learned and think, what am I going to take into my next venture? What lesson or what do you think that you've learned that you're going to take into your next thing that you're doing? He has notes for this
Well,
one.
I mean, I got the highs and lows from the last 14 years, but we don't need to read those on the air or live.
Just pick a few.
But no, I think some of the things for sure is that, there is no I in team for sure. And of course we all hear that, we all say that. But Made for More, we're freaking working for free right now. And I wish I could change that, and I hope to change that soon. But the fact that you have a relationship and you lead through the relationship and you lead through empowering people. But the one thing that I do know that I've said this recently that I learned for sure was the fact that I'm not a counselor. I've learned that I'm not a counselor. And as sad as that might sound to some people, and I think that's taken over the last couple of days that I've talked to people as I'm leaving, or the last couple of weeks, I think that being honest with them that I'm not good at that, even though they thought I was, that the next chapter is I'm an empowerer, that's what I need to do. That's who God made me to be, is to be an empowerer, a coach, and come alongside people. And so as far as that goes, it's being able to go, I need to stay within my sweet spot and not move out of that and allow other people to do what they're empowered to do, and not, like Jocko said, I don't know everything. But for sure that, and then the biggest thing is over the last 4 years, 3.5 years is the extreme ownership, is I'm responsible for what happens. I'm responsible for anything that I'm over, and I have to be able to take responsibility for that with my time with my family, with my boundaries, with people that try to take my time, I'm the one that has to take ownership over that. There's no one else that's going to be held accountable for that. I'm accountable for my own actions, and no one else is. And then I think the biggest thing is just being able to say, you know, I don't have it all together as a dad, but I want to make sure that my legacy is left because I spent time with them and I didn't say yes to everything. I already lost track of the question.
That's okay. You answered it. Yeah. What are you gonna take with you?
Yeah, that and then and that it's and this is a big one. This is probably one of the biggest like glaring lights that I've seen over the last few months is it doesn't look the way you think it's gonna look. Success does not look the way you think it's gonna look. Meaning, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I'm working with 3 clients at different levels, and it's definitely different than I thought. And then when I talk to other organizations and companies, it's the same way. When I talk to Shane hopefully leaving well, it's not the way we thought it was, but that's where it's at. And so not to be so, not to be so difficult or hard on yourself because you're making progress. So it's easier said than done.
Yeah. So so far we've talked a lot about a lot of the personal side of it. So if we transition a little bit to if somebody is going to leave a job, I have a few kind of summarize some of the things we're going to go over some of the points, and so I want you to kind of talk about them a little bit from a personal view or a leadership view. So one of the most important things when you're leaving a job, if it's time for you to leave, your first thing is don't make a rash decision. So I mean that I feel like that's a given.
Yeah.
Make sure it's what you want to do. Is to give ample time.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what that looks like for you. What do you think that means?
Meaning your notice?
Yeah.
I think the higher the level, the more time you're gonna have to give. When we left to come here, I gave, hey babe, I'm talking to Jamie, I'm talking to Jamie, not Jamie. When I left, was it a 1 month notice or 3 month notice?
From
Finish
where?
line. I mean the other place.
Oh, 1.
Is it 3 month notice?
Was it 3?
Yeah.
I think it was.
Because we traveled here.
'Cause
And
I
the reason
remember
I said
that,
3
yeah.
months is
Oh
because
yeah, because it was our anniversary.
yeah, the reason I put 3 months for that is because, you're a market leader, a manager, trainer, you're over an entire market, and you're wanting to train to become a DMMIT. So the level of leadership was higher, and to replace somebody in that part of the company was difficult, and so I wanted to respect them, and I didn't want to leave them in a tight spot. So I thought 3 months was a lot.
Yeah.
At that point in time. So 3 months is quite a bit. So for me, right now, if someone's been with an organization maybe 15 years, I would maybe give 60 days to go, but have a plan. Here's what I'm going to do. And if they go, you know what, that's generous, then what is it? What do you want me to give? 30 days. So I would say anywhere from 1 month to 2 months is
I think
generous.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
So the second one is tell your boss first. That your boss should hear it from you.
Spouse.
Once you've decided to leave, these are
You
basic.
I say go to
These
your
are-
boss, tell them that you quit, and then come home and tell your wife.
Yeah, I'm sure that would go really
Or,
well. Jamie, would you like the microphone to speak on that?
Just kidding.
So my next thing is finish strong, because I think that is hard.
Yeah, that's probably the most annoying thing as a leader is to see someone who, for me, when I worked over someone, and I was their supervisor, if they quit halfway, I'm like, you might as well just go home. Let us pay you out. I'll pay the rest of your month. I don't want you here. And that's me saying that because our performance is lagging because of your lack of follow through. And you said you were going to give it 2 weeks. And so at my previous job, that's what we did. Put your 2 weeks in, but don't come back in.
Well, and I think that is very true. And I think it shows a lot about your character if you can finish strong, because it's very tempting to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
And so, I can see that. I can see that that's a strong part, especially if you're doing the 2 weeks or the month, you have to finish strong, because that says a lot about you. One of the things I read that I really liked is it said, that last impressions last forever. And so it's however you leave that job, that is what the people remember about you.
That's good.
If you, yeah, I mean, I was like, that's probably really true.
Yeah, first impressions, I guess, and last impressions, especially when it comes to a job. Yeah, I think, and I don't know how. I guess it depends on who's leaving and your level of leadership, but I don't know how different, and it might be hugely different as ministry is from the corporate world, where the reason I was in it for almost a year, we let people know that I was leaving a year ago. And I think because of the attachment of emotional walkthrough with people in life, loss of life, all this stuff that people think, and we'll get to this in a second. Let's talk about what's been done for me here at the end.
Okay.
But you might make that note. But I think that the ministry side of it being like a year notice or 9-month notice, whatever it was, there's a purpose for that ministry because you're having to walk through life with people. And yeah, we did tier away where I was there for 5 days a week to 2 days a week to just 1 day a week. And there's a purpose for that, but I think that it could have been shorter, but I think for what we did, we had a plan and it worked. And I think the biggest part of it is have a plan, but don't freaking give up early because you're working with people.
I think what you said just a few minutes ago is you said like success might not look like what you thought it was going to look like, but I think it's the same, like leaving might not look like what you thought it would look like.
Yeah,
because true. I mean, I don't imagine, when you went in and said like, this is the next thing I'm going to do in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys created a whole transition plan that was like 9 months long,
Yeah.
But
I thought it was going to be longer than that and then shorter than that. And then we just happened to land on that.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
And it's also a natural, I mean, again, for people that don't know ministry, it's a natural transition with school ending and lots of finishes.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I also think that, with ministry, I mean, it does happen with other positions, but I think also, I had to trust that like our leader, that Shane was praying about it and that he felt like that's, what was supposed to happen. And now knowing the way that it happened, if you would have left in January or whatever, 6 months earlier, then I don't think we would be in the same position we are now.
Yeah, true.
So, I mean, like when you step back, you're like, oh, that's why it had to look like that.
Yeah.
And so for you to be able to be obedient and say like, yeah, like I'm going to do this. And, and for Shane to say, we're not going to rush this. We're going to stick with it. Okay. So one of the other things that they talked about was thanking and encouraging those that you lead. Which I think that you have done a great job with in, making sure that you have connected with all of the people that you have relationships with and all the other staff and, making sure that you've said like, hey, I appreciate you. And
I'm not done with that yet.
You're not done. And I also think the one benefit I think that we have in your situation is that you're leaving the job, but you're not leaving the relationships.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you're not moving, you're still involved. So it's a little bit different than if you were not ever going to see most of these people again. So,
and I think too, for the people, again, the difference in ministry and other jobs is you're walking through some of the most traumatic events, good events with people. I mean, I think of John, I think of Dan, I think of you guys. People, Tracy, people that are in our office, right? That when I went from going to work 5 days a week to only one, it gave them some time to go, this is a transition, and I didn't think it was, but then we're texting and stuff, but there's a grieving process for everyone to go, man, we got to accept it. The first step is accepting that it's gonna be different.
Yeah.
So
as we wrap up, is there anything with this part of it? Is there anything that you would have done different in the way that you chose to leave? That somebody could learn from?
I think...
you can say, no, I'm perfect. I didn't do anything.
No, it's not that I was perfect. I just think that... in this instance, I could see that it could be shorter, not a whole 9 months or however long.
Yeah, I don't even remember now.
But I also think that...
I think it was like 11 months. Because
August?
I was thinking it was like June or July.
July was
when
when we told everybody.
When you went in and told Shane. Because
Yeah.
he talks
I
about.
think I told it in June. I told him in June because he was about to go on vacation.
That's what I was gonna say. I feel like that if he listens to this, that's what he's gonna say. He always says, and he told me right before I was going on
Yeah.
vacation.
Well, we were in a meeting and he said, if y'all have anything for me, come tell me. I'll be
Okay.
So I went in
There
there,
you're out.
and he's about to go on a 2-week vacation. And I went, hey man, I don't mean to ruin your vacation before you get there, but I'm gonna pursue something else.
Yeah.
I think I don't know. I think at some point, you don't want to drag that out, but also, man, I really don't know. I don't think, to me, I don't think I would do anything different.
Yeah, so I mean, I think, but in talking through this, I think you did a lot of things. I just wondered, as somebody who's just now going through it, if there was anything different that you would do.
Now, I think the other thing, what I would tell someone, that if you haven't had that conversation with your boss or your supervisor, especially if it's someone that you're really close to, write it out first, so you can look over and read it to yourself, and then throw away the paper. Don't read off a paper. Don't
read off the
freaking-
paper if you need to.
Don't freaking email your boss that you're
No,
doing.
tell them
Please
that's
don't.
tell them in person
Yes,
always.
but I would write it out to get that out, right? And then you go, okay, maybe it's just something that I ate, or maybe it's just something I'm upset about.
Don't
But
make a rash decision.
Yes, exactly. Just make sure you write it out and I put bullet points just to go, okay, I'm going to talk about this and this and this. Because to me, that's what helps, is just trying to process through all the information. I would hope that they would think through it, have the conversation with the boss in person, and then just know you're for sure that you want to do it.
Yeah, and finish strong. I mean, for sure. I think that's my one. Finish strong.
Yeah,
So-
that's good.
Okay, so you had 2 points you wanted to come back
No,
to.
it's interesting because most
Okay.
of the people that are listening right now, Darren's in the room, but what's interesting is he's going to be, I don't know if I can say this, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
Darren's going to be replacing me as the campus pastor for Liberty Hill, so I think that's cool.
Yeah, well, and I wasn't gonna talk about that just because I think we could go on a whole tangent, but that's what I was thinking about if you would have had a whole different timeline, I don't think it would have been in his mind, in his heart. I just don't think he would have even been able to process of what that would look like.
Yeah, so it's just interesting that you and I have worked together. Darren's replacing me, but I'm also your daughter's supervisor.
Yeah,
And I
yes.
work with her husband. So weird.
I
Try to
know.
explain that to people.
We were somewhere, and you
We're
were
all
saying
family.
that.
It was
With
at-
the
it was at
game.
yeah, it was at the baseball
Yes,
game.
and it was
with
so
good stuff.
confusing. They were like, and
they
I
were
work
like-
with her, and then I work with him, and then he's replacing me, but I'm her boss.
Yeah, and they were like, really? I was like, yeah, it's a whole weird thing. So I think that's cool for me, is that Darren and I have a relationship as friends, and some of the stuff that I confided in was with Darren over the years. When I had tough times, Darren, when we traveled together over with students, he was there. So it wasn't just you as a coworker, but Darren, as a friend, and him being able to step into this where I can play that role if he needs. And then I just think it's been interesting. I don't know how to call it outside of what some of the people outside our church call it, is like a farewell tour, which is crazy because I was not expecting what we've done for me leaving the church. I mean, like what the church has done for me as I'm leaving, from people doing things, from people from the party to the announcements seven times, and people coming out. But this past Sunday when we had that party, just seeing people that I hadn't seen in a while, and then I don't know what's happening Sunday.
Well, and I was going to say, I wish we would have recorded this after this Sunday, because this is your last Sunday.
Yeah, this is coming up. Yeah. And so I think that I'm very, very appreciative of that, because it helps me put that line in the sand that, hey, this is done. This is over.
And then you're going to have your last meal with the staff on
Tuesday. So, and what's funny is that people outside of the church are like, hey bro, is this the end party of all end parties? Are you going to have one more party? Is it going to be the last supper? Like, what is it? I'm like, bro, I just am very appreciative of the fact that it feels like the last 14 years meant something to people. So I will say that probably the highlight so far of the 14 years and 14 days, if you haven't looked at it, go to my social media, and there's a video for the past 14 days. But 14 years and 14 days, probably my biggest highlight so far is someone that she came on there. Her name was different when I met her. Amy Battles was her name, and now it's different. And this is in Midland. And she just came on there. She said, I've never heard you teach. I've never heard a sermon or a lesson from you But 14 years ago, you helped me with some shoes because I was in the high end of my training, and I came in and you were so passionate about selling shoes, so knowledgeable, and I was like, to me, that's legacy of not even in the church. That's the kind of person I want to be remembered for. And I think that's the way I'm trying to explain people when they say, hey, you're leaving, so what do you do? And I'm going, I'm just trying to leave people better than I found them, like companies better than I found them, because that's what I think life is about for me, is leaving people better than I found them, but helping them realize they had it in them. So, and that's how this podcast, that's why this podcast exists.
Well, I definitely think that the church is definitely better off because you were involved in it.
I thought you were going to say that the church is better off. It's getting better.
It's better. We are better for having you on our
There's
team.
a joke around the staff, right, that I sit there sometimes and I said, maybe I'm the Aiken. And if you don't know who Aiken is, it's the guy that God said, hey, once you're gone, everything's going to flourish.
Everything's gonna
So,
goodbye.
Yeah.
No.
But no, seriously, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been cool. It's coming to an end, and it's freeing. It feels good to know that in a good way that's ending, and it's hard to tell your boss that, Shane, because he's your friend and your pastor, that hey, like Monday he sat down with me on a one-on-one. He said, hey, how's it feel? And I felt bad saying, I feel really good. I'm good, man.
He wants that for you, though.
Yeah, and that's it. And I will tell you this though, if I'm being completely honest, when you put in your notice and you're leaving, you can't go back and change anything. You can give insight, right? So one of the things that I've talked about with you, and some of the things that I've said is, if something changes because you leave for the better, you just got to accept that and say, hey, we learned a lesson. We learned a lesson, and they learned something from me being there for a little bit and going on. And so, God, my stomach is growling. But just know that, things are going to go on. Life goes on. And that's what I've learned about in funerals, when you leave jobs, and when you move, is that, hey, life goes on. So try to leave people better than you found them.
There you go. There you go. All right. Well, that's all I have, unless you have another.
I don't
Something else
think
you
I
wanna
did.
say.
I thought I did, but
No, because I think that's what it was. It was what had been done for you.
Yep.
And
yeah.
then you wrote
And
down
so,
Darren.
God, my stomach. I seriously need to eat something. But no, I appreciate you with those questions. That was really good. I was a little afraid of what we were going to talk about. And so if anyone from our church listens to this, I would hope that everybody would listen to this from our church so they can, I don't think I said anything that they'd surprise them, but I really do appreciate Rock Point, appreciate Shane and Julie, their family, you guys as a family, as friends. That's where I met Adina. She was one of our students. And just our church, and if Rock Point listens to this, just to know that, yeah, it's not easy to leave. It was not easy to put in my notice, but it is something that I know that God's guided me to, and that it's for the better for all of us. And I'm always going to be here to serve. So whether that's security team, serving coffee,
Or middle school
teaching middle
boys.
school. So yeah,
Wherever's needed, that's where Mario will serve.
possibly not little kids. But I appreciate you doing this, Adina. I appreciate it. So yeah, if you are listening, go to our website, madeformoreconsulting.com. That's the number 4. You can buy some merch there. We're running out. We're about to run out. Also, you can follow us on Instagram, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and just give us a rating on our podcast. 5 stars, what Adina says.
Yes,
So-
and for sure, I know we said this at the beginning, but I think everybody would benefit from going back and listening to your 14 years and 14 days, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and so today, yesterday,
I listened to like all of them in one day,
Yeah.
like today.
Yeah.
But
and it's funny because I
That would
forget
come
what
all
day
together.
they are, and so I should probably go back and listen before I
Yes.
post tonight.
You should.
But it's just 14 years and 14 days. So again, we appreciate it, and the whole reason we do this is what we say at the end. Remember, we exist for more. We're here to offer more. Don't ever give up. Every single one of us is made for more. We'll talk to you guys later. You too. Whoa. Peace. What was that?
I was like, I know that.
Air
Air
seat,
going
the
off.
AC, air seat.
Everything?
The AC.